Okay, so we'll make a start. So you've, like I say, you're very welcome to the online Dublin Buddhist Centre. And my name's Nyanadara, so I'll be teaching the course over the 5 weeks. And yeah, particularly welcome to you if it's your first time doing a course either at the Dublin Buddhist Centre or the online Dublin Buddhist Centre. So what we're going to do this evening is I'll talk a little bit about the course and what we're going to be doing. I'll say a few words about metta, and then what we're going to do is we're going to break into groups. So each week there'll be breakout rooms, and the breakout rooms will be the same 7 people every week. And we've also got a team of supporters on the course. So there's about 14 or 15 of us on the team. So there'll be somebody, well, there'll probably be 2 people in your group at least who are experienced meditators and have been doing the Metta Bhavana for a while. So they'll kind of facilitate the groups as well. And as I say, you'll be with the same people every week. So you get a bit of a chance to get to know some new people. Quite hard to get to know new people in a lockdown, but this is an opportunity to get to know a few more people. And just before we kind of get into it, so we'll do that, and then we'll have a 10-minute break. And each week during the break, if you've got any questions, you can feed them into the chat box during the break, and I'll attempt to answer them after the break. So tonight, after the break, what we'll do is I'll talk a little bit about how we're going to approach the Metta Bhavana in these first weeks of practice. Then we'll actually do the practice of the Metta Bhavana, and we'll set up our home practice for the week. So just before we get into the guts of the course, I just want to say a couple of things about Zoom if you're not familiar with it. I expect probably everybody is at this stage, but just in case you're not familiar with it, just to say that there's 2 views. You can have gallery view, which is where you see everybody on the call, or you can have speaker view, which is where you just see the person who's talking, which most of the time is going to be me. And if you're on a phone or a smaller device, a tablet or something, you can swipe left and right to get the different views. And if your connection is bad, if you've got an intermittent internet connection or the bandwidth isn't good, you can turn your video off, and that'll improve the sound and the actual the video as well. So you can do that anytime. Just turn your video off. And Daniel, you had a point about the name that you wanted. Daniel is our tech support, so he's in the background operating all the tech, and he just wanted to make a point about your name. Oh, there you are. Hello. So this is Daniel, everybody. Hi, Daniel.
Thanks, Yanadara. Hi, folks. You're all very welcome to the course. So as Yanadara said, I'll be doing the tech support for the next 5 weeks. And you also have got an email from me the last couple of days with a link to the Zoom. So just to say, for those of you that have opted in, you'll get 2 emails from me a week. One will be a follow-up email with a recording of the class, as well as some notes and resources. And the second email will just be the course link again. The link will always be the same, but it ends up getting lost in people's emails as the week goes on. So it's just kind of a refresher coming the day before the course. And just to say about what Yanadara was saying, it's really helpful when setting up these breakout rooms that you'll be going into if your name is on screen. So what you can do is, if you have a mouse, you just right click on your own camera and you'll see the option to rename. And if you could put your full name in there, it'd be really helpful just to ensure you get a smooth transition into your breakout room.
So it's the 3 little dots, isn't it, in the top right-hand corner of your picture?
Yeah, or you just right click your image and you'll hit rename.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah.
And if you have any other tech questions, you can always drop me a line in the chat, which you can see at the very bottom of your screen, and I'll try and help you as best I can with your tech. So best of luck and enjoy the course.
Cool. Thanks, Daniel. That's great. So Metta Bhavana. So I'll just say a couple of things just to remind us about Metta Bhavana, and then I'll say a little bit about the course itself that we're going to be doing and what it is that we're going to be covering. So metta, this word is a word that comes from the same language as words like Buddha, and it means something like loving kindness or friendliness. It's sometimes described as a solidarity of life with life, or an imaginative identification of life with life, of one life with another life. So it's a very, very central not just meditation practice, but attitude that is right at the heart, right at the core of Buddhism, of the Buddhist path. And bhavana, the word bhavana means development or cultivation. So the Metta Bhavana is the development of loving kindness, the development of friendliness, the development of the solidarity of life with life. And I just wanted to say a little bit about why we might do the Metta Bhavana. I mean, I'll say quite a bit about it in the next 5 weeks, but I just wanted to say a few words. And I wanted to talk about it in terms of having different layers or different levels. So we can think of it as having an outer kind of level, an inner level, and a secret level. So this is particularly in Tibetan Buddhism. This is where they often talk as different practices or different truths having different levels. So there's an outer level, an inner level, and a secret level. So the outer level with the Metta Bhavana is that the benefit, the outer level of the benefit of doing the Metta Bhavana is that it helps us relate to people better. It improves our relationships. It improves our attitudes towards others. And really, I think if we reflect on it, what causes a lot of the distress that we experience in our lives is the breakdown of relationships, conflict in relationships, or actually the severing of a relationship. And Metta Bhavana helps us to respond to the difficulties that inevitably arise in the whole range of different relationships that we have as human beings, whether it's with our family or with our work colleagues or with people on the street, whatever is going on in terms of our interaction with other people. Metta Bhavana will help those interactions and those relationships be more mutually beneficial and positive and even enjoyable. And it will help us deepen our friendships and will help us to connect with a wide range of people. So I think that's one of the things the Metta Bhavana does, is that it helps us to relate at a very, very deep layer of human experience. And that means that we don't depend on particularities about who we are, about other people. We can connect on just a level of being a living human being. So that's just a little bit about the kind of outer level. The inner level is that, the benefit of doing the Metta Bhavana is that it's quite simple really, it brings peace of mind. So aversion, ill will, hatred, resentment are deeply corrosive mental states. So when we're in those mental states, it's very, very difficult, if not impossible, for us to be happy. So there's that famous image that the Buddha gives of hatred being like a hot coal that we pick up to throw at somebody, and we're burnt by it in the process of picking it up. So hatred is like that. It burns us, it poisons our mind and stops us from enjoying life, stops us from being happy. And you could say that the secret level, the deepest level, is that Metta Bhavana, the development of this sort of sensitive, open, wise heart, helps us see into the nature of things. It helps us to develop insight into the way things really are. So when the Buddha talks about metta in a famous ancient teaching called the Metta Sutta, he talks about metta as it being a way of freeing ourselves from the rounds of rebirth. So you can think of that in a way as metta helps us to free ourselves from the patterns that we get into. So one of the things we often say in terms of anger and hatred is that he or she pushes our buttons. And when our buttons are pushed, it's as if we kind of go around this wheel of habit and we get stuck in this sort of treadmill. And when we can see that that's just something that we're creating, that's something that we're doing ourselves moment by moment, we can free ourselves from that. So this is what the real value of insight is, that it frees us from reactive patterns and we're able to respond to what's actually really going on. And whatever response we make, if it's based on a real understanding of what's happening, it will be a creative response, it'll be an appropriate response, it'll be a beneficial response. So Metta Bhavana, I'll just say this one thing and then I'll talk about the actual course itself. Metta Bhavana, it's got these different layers of benefits: outer benefits, inner benefits, secret benefits. Um, it's a creative process. This process of developing metta is a creative process. It's not something that we can force. We can't just will metta into being in a kind of crude, bloody-minded kind of way. It has to be something where we work with the actual material that we have to work with, our own heart and our own mind, the relationships that we have, the attitudes that we have to other people. That's what we're working with. That's where we start from. And yeah, we need to work with, the difficult aspects as well as the more helpful aspects. And this connection, it just reminded me of there's a very famous piece of music by an American jazz pianist called Keith Jarrett, who some of you might have heard of. A famous concert that he did, a solo improvised piano concert that he recorded in the 1970s. It's called the Cologne Concert, and it's very, very famous. Some of you probably know that music quite well. But apparently, the piano that he was playing that night wasn't a very good piano, and but he just rolled with it. He just accepted the fact that the piano wasn't a very good piano, and just played this beautiful concert. So sometimes it's like that for us, that life has got all kinds of bum notes, but we can still create metta. We can still be creative with those bum notes. So that's just like I say, a little bit about metta, just to kind of kick us off. So what I want to do now is just share a little bit about what we're going to be doing each of the 5 weeks. So I'm just going to share my screen, if you bear with me for just a moment. So hopefully you can see what is metta on your screen. So that's basically the theme for this week, is to refresh our understanding about what metta is and what it is that we're trying to do in the Metta Bhavana practice. One of the things I've noticed, I've been teaching this meditation practice for about 16 years or something. And one of the things I've noticed is that with meditation generally, but with Metta Bhavana in particular, is that often people's understanding about what they're trying to do in meditation that gets in the way of their practice going deeper. Often we have a kind of a slightly mistaken or a slightly just wrong perspective on what it is that we're trying to do, and that prevents us from going deeper. We might have, and a lot of people do have, a lot of energy for meditation, a lot of commitment, but it's just the understanding is not quite there. So what we're going to try and do tonight, and actually for the whole course, is just refresh our understanding about what metta is. Try and really understand what it is that we're trying to do when we do Metta Bhavana. And we're particularly going to be looking at the fact that we often, like the reason I say that thing about it's a creative process, the thing that we often get wrong, as it were, the thing that often trips us up, is that we're just too forceful with Metta Bhavana. We push too hard. We kind of try and squeeze it out, as it were, and it goes dry. And that's why people can end up hating it, because it just feels really dry and really rigid and really forced. So we're just going to try and open it up tonight, open up the practice and make it really spacious and really exploratory. So what we're going to do for the subsequent nights is focus on one of the stages of the practice. So as you know, the practice has got 5 stages. And on the second week, we're going to focus on the first stage, which is the stage of metta for oneself. And again, that's often a stage that people find really difficult for various reasons. So again, we're going to try and get underneath some of those issues to do with developing metta for oneself, and see if we can understand that stage of the practice more deeply, and how it provides the basis for the other stages that follow. So the other stage that people find most difficult is the 4th stage, which is metta for a difficult person, and that's what we're going to look at on week 3. So in a way, you're inviting those bum notes in your life, into your practice when you do the fourth stage. You're actually inviting in those difficult encounters with other people and really working on how you respond to them. So yeah, that's week 3. And then week 4, we're going to look at metta for a neutral person. So again, actually all the stages are challenging. I mean, just to say, the Metta Bhavana is a really challenging practice. So if you do find it difficult, in a way that's quite normal. Don't feel exceptional. It's quite normal to find it difficult. It's really, really challenging. But then all the things that are most worth doing in life are challenging. So that's week 4 will be metta for a neutral person. And then in the 5th week, we're going to be looking at the last stage, metta for all beings. Metta for the second stage will come up during the course of the course as well. And we will look at some other themes as we hang on. Yeah, there we go. Someone just asked me, can I explain the secret level a bit more? Maybe I'll do that after the break. Yeah. So just to say, we'll cover some other themes as well as the different stages. So we'll look at receptivity and activity. We'll look at the relationship between metta and our ethics, so what we do with our lives, the relationship between metta and gratitude, between metta and body awareness, between metta and insight, which is the secret level that I was talking about. So later on, after we come back after the break, after we've had our group, I'll talk a little bit more about metta and clarify what it is. Just a few general things about the course. One thing is to come along even if you don't feel like it. So one of the things that we're trying to learn with Buddhism generally, actually, but meditation in particular, is to meet whatever's arising in our experience with curiosity and with awareness, and with kindness as well. So, and that's if we stop doing that, if our experience is difficult, then it'll prevent the beneficial effects of the practice from really taking hold. So if every time we don't feel like it, we don't do it, it undermines the momentum of the practice. So really strongly encourage you to come along, even if you don't feel like coming along, to actually make a commitment to come into these sessions every week. And I think that's particularly important when you can log on from your own living room. It's much easier. There's so many tempting other things to be doing. So I think it's doubly important to make a really firm commitment to being here at 7:00 each Tuesday night. I'll say more about the home practice, which is also something that you need to do even if you don't feel like it. I don't want to overly emphasize that, because in a way, sometimes it's appropriate to change what you had planned to do based on your feelings. But generally speaking, it's a good thing to do, to just keep meditating, regardless of what your present experience happens to be. So there is going to be home practice as part of the course. So every evening, I'll send you away with some a particular approach to bring to the Metta Bhavana. And what I'd encourage you to do is to emphasize the Metta Bhavana this week. If you do the mindfulness of breathing as well, you might like to keep up with that. Just concentrate on the Metta Bhavana in your practice, your meditation practice during the week. You might like to do extra meditation. You might like to meditate a bit more than you normally do. I'll leave that up to you to think about and decide. So a lot of this course will really happen outside of these Tuesday night sessions. It'll happen in your home. And what these sessions will be about is setting intentions for the coming week, and then also reviewing how we got on with what we intended to do, reviewing what we intended to do. And that's a big part of what the home groups are going to be about. Just actually having the opportunity to reflect on what we've been practicing with some other people and hearing what they've got to say, and maybe some of the issues that we all experience will come up in those groups, and we'll be able to address them. So one thing you might like to do is just to help this process of reflection, of evaluation, of ongoing kind of deepening understanding about what the Metta Bhavana is you could get a journal. So just a little book that you can note things down, and it can be quite a nice thing. If it's actually a book that you like, and you can write down your intentions each week. You can like I say, every time after you meditate, you can just say how it was. It can just be like just a few words, If you tried something that worked really well, it's really, really good to note it down, because then you're more likely to remember it. You can look back as well. And you might even use it to jog your memory in terms of things that you might want to bring to the next class, questions or issues that you want to raise. So it can really, really help to get a journal. And a friend of mine, actually, she keeps a meditation journal, which she does with watercolor. So she's got a little like a notebook, and her meditation notebook is pictures. So she does it that way, which is really interesting. Like Daniel was saying, we'll send you an email every Wednesday, and that will we'll upload the video. We're recording this class, and we'll make a video available so you can look on YouTube. And if you miss a class or you'd like to view it again, you can do that on YouTube. And also you can follow the lead meditation at home. So what I'll be doing each evening is leading the Metta Bhavana with a particular kind of approach, or a particular focus, or a particular emphasis. And so that you can follow up at home with that same emphasis, that same approach, by following the video. So that's part of the reason why we're doing that. And you can link straight to that video again from the email. Attached to the email will be notes of the material that we covered in the class. So yeah, you can take notes if you want, but there will be notes sent out to you as well that you can print out or just read on screen, or whatever you like. So unlike some of the other courses that we do, there's no kind of book for this course. However, there are a couple of books that I'd recommend, and I'll include these in the email. So one is called Living with Kindness by Sangharakshita, and that's a commentary on the Metta Sutta, that teaching on Metta that the Buddha gave. The other one is called The Heart by Vasantara, and that's more specifically about Metta Bhavana. Living with Kindness is more about the quality of Metta in the broadest sense, and The Heart is more specifically about the Metta Bhavana practice itself. So one last thing to say before we go into our home groups, and that is that all the courses that we're doing at the moment at the Dublin Buddhist Centre, we're doing for free. We've been doing that since March, and it's actually worked out quite well for us, and it's a really lovely way to work. So you can just, because we're not limited by space, I think there's 60, how many people are there on this course? There's 69 people on the course. We could never fit 69 people in our little Buddhist centre that we have in the north inner city of Dublin. So we're able to throw the doors open, which means we can have as many people as want to do the course. And we're doing it for free so that anyone can participate in that way. So whilst we're doing everything for free, we've still obviously got a Buddhist centre to run. We've got people who need to be financially supported to keep it running, and even though we're not using the building for events, there's still costs and so on associated with running a charity and having a building and all that. So we're just basically dependent completely at the moment. We're completely dependent on people's donations. So if you appreciate what we're doing at the Dublin Buddhist Centre through these courses and other things, do please make a donation. That would make a big difference to our ability to keep doing this, and not only to keep doing it, but to develop it. So we want to develop what we're doing. And actually, weirdly, it's quite an exciting time for our Buddhist community. We're accessing a whole range of people that we would never otherwise be able to connect with through the internet. So we've got people, there's probably people on the course, I don't know where you're all from, but I expect there's people from all over the country and maybe even beyond these borders, which is really great. Yeah, so that's just a few words by way of introduction to the course, what we're going to be doing, the approach that we're going to be taking. So now we'll have a chance just to meet a few other people in the home groups. Like I said a minute ago, that there'll probably be a couple of team members in your group. So one or other of them will just sort of facilitate the group each week. Yeah, they've all said that if you could if you're not going to be able to come to the course, do just let them know. It's just nice to know where people are, so that you can develop a little bit more of a sense of continuity from week to week. So that they'll give you their email, so you can contact them and let them know if you're not going to be able to come on a particular evening. So I think that's all I need to say about the groups, except I just got a few questions. So you don't have to follow these questions, but there's just a few questions just to kind of get you going if you want to, just something to get you going. So let me just share the questions. So the questions are, how do you find the Metta Bhavana? So what's your experience of the Metta Bhavana? I mean, do you hate the Metta Bhavana? You might love it, or you might be a bit ambivalent towards it, but how do you find it, and what's your experience of doing it? Maybe the benefits. So that's the second question. What are the benefits of doing the practice? So maybe benefits that you've experienced yourself in the past, or maybe things that you feel are potential within the practice that you'd like to access or you'd like to bring out. And thirdly, what do you think the challenges might be for you in the practice, and not just the practice itself, but in committing yourself to the practice and doing the course? So yeah, just 3 questions just to get you going. But really, you can talk about whatever you feel is relevant. There'll be 7 people in every group, and we'll have 20 minutes. So you'll just need to be the team leaders will keep an eye on the time a bit, and do please say your name as well. Yeah. So that's just something to get you going. So, are you ready to go, Daniel?
Yeah, all good.
Yep, fantastic. So let's do that now. We'll go into our group. So I'll see a few of you shortly, and I'll see all of you in about 20 minutes' time. Okay, so just got a few questions which I'll see if I can respond to. So Naranjan's got a question, and there will be meditation every night. There'll be 2 sessions most nights, one full Metta Bhavana and probably a slightly shorter one. Someone said, Daniel said, is there any limit to metta? No. No is the question. The idea is, in a way, you cultivate an attitude that whatever you encounter is met with metta. Yeah, so that's the idea. Is that it's not limited to any one particular focal point. We'll say more about that, particularly in the last stage when we look at the final stage. Yeah, another question about identifying who to include in the practice. One thing I'd say about that is just to make sure that you choose. In a way, it doesn't matter terribly who you choose, but just to make sure that you stay with that person for the duration of the stage. So that's very important. If you're an indecisive kind of person, I can be a bit like that sometimes. You can decide who you're going to put in each of the stages before you start. Yeah, so rather than wasting time during the practice itself, you can actually decide at the beginning who you're going to choose for each stage. I'm also aware that some of you haven't done the Metta Bhavana before. So what we'll do is we'll send you an email to an introductory course that you can listen to if you want to kind of catch up on some of the more introductory stuff. But I think if you're willing to give it a go, then you should be able to kind of catch up a little bit, as it were. But yeah, we'll give you some additional material that you can look at if you haven't done the practice before, because I'm not going to be teaching it from scratch on this course, as you might have gathered, just to let you know that. Sorry if you expected it to be an introductory course, but we are assuming that you've learned the practice already. And we will, like I say, send you material if you want to learn it. And those 2 books that I recommended, I'll also let you know what they are. Yeah, in the email. Any advice? Someone's asking, any advice on choosing the difficult person? Well, the basic advice is choose somebody that you find difficult, somebody whose company you find painful in some way. The general advice is, if when you're beginning the practice, is not to choose somebody that's really difficult, like maybe somebody who's ruined your life, and also to avoid choosing somebody who you don't know, who's just a kind of maybe a politician or someone that you don't like in the kind of public sphere. To actually pick somebody that you're in direct contact with. That'll make it a bit more real. Not that politicians don't need our metta, etc. Does caffeine affect meditation practice? I find it does a bit. Yeah, I can be a bit sort of hyper if I've drank a lot of coffee. The thing with questions like that is just try it and see. Like have a cup of tea before you meditate and see what happens. Part of what we're trying to do as part of the broader kind of process is to see the relationship between what we do and what we say and the kind of mind that we have. For example, if you go for a run and you're trying to meditate, you'll probably be quite sort of hyped up for a little while. It can be useful to sort of see what conditions are helpful for meditation immediately prior to meditating. Like, for example, going onto your computer and firing off a whole lot of emails is probably not going to be the best preparation for meditation. Not that there's anything wrong with writing emails, but you might find that you're quite sort of stimulated. So it can sometimes be quite good to notice the effect of doing something quite simple and quite physical before you meditate. You can, wash up or fold the washing or, shave or something, and then meditate rather than doing something kind of complex and conceptual. And then I'm guessing it's best to keep the same 3 people, friend, neutral, difficult, every time. Yeah, well, it can be good because you can develop a bit of momentum. On the other hand, different people will come into your mind. Like, for example, like I just heard that my stepmother's father died, which is a big deal for her and for, her family. So I'll be putting her in my Metta Bhavana because that feels like an appropriate thing to do. And also I'll be putting him in my Metta Bhavana. So sometimes the vicissitudes of life kind of throw up particular people that we need to bear in mind. You can just keep the same people. But I think it's good to kind of not just get into a habit to do it. If you're going to do that consciously. But it can be good to do it, particularly if you're the sort of person who spends a lot of time humming and hawing, because like I said earlier, you can waste time. So I think those are all the questions. There'll be plenty of other chance. Oh, one more. Just to say, one of the bits of advice, traditionally one of the bits of advice is in the second stage, not to pick somebody that you're in a romantic relationship with or a sexual relationship with. Not because that's a terrible thing or anything. It's just that it makes it more simpler to develop metta when there's not some of those romantic feelings involved. Having said that, it's not to say that you should never do that. It'd be strange if you weren't allowed to do that for somebody that you were really close to. They might even end up in your 4th stage from time to time. that's life, folks. But you could. One thing you can do is in the fifth stage, when you're bringing to mind everybody, you can include people who you're close to. It's really good to do that, actually. I will get on to that. Do we need to be in daily or regular contact with people we choose? No, not necessarily. Not necessarily. But like I say, it's good if they're genuine relationships, not somebody who's just a cardboard cutout to us, like Donald Trump or something like that. So let's press on. What I wanted to talk about is just to talk about really just what is metta, and to start this by just talking about the fundamentals of human experience. So really, when we're meditating, what we're working with, what we're dealing with, are the fundamentals of human experience. So you could say that there's two facts of life. Well, there's lots of facts of life, but the two facts that we're dealing with tonight, and that there are like two strands that are arising all the time in our experience. So there's what is there in our experience, what's happening, and then there's what we do in response to what's happening. Yeah? So there's these two aspects of experience all the time. What's happening and what we do in response to what's happening. So what we do in response to what's happening will be thoughts, will be attitudes, will be emotions arising in the mind, which will be expressed in terms of speech and bodily actions. So that's the response that we're making to what's happening. So in terms of what is there, what is happening, we can think of that in terms of the six senses. Yeah? So what's happening is that we're seeing things, we're hearing things, we're smelling things, we're tasting things, we're feeling things with our body. And in Buddhism, the mind is considered a sense as well. So interestingly, the mind produces its own objects. So the eye doesn't produce its own objects, it just perceives, colours and forms and shapes and so on out there, as it were. The mind strangely kind of produces its own objects. So what is there is also, when I'm talking about what's there, I'm also talking about what's in the mind, what's being produced by the mind by way of images and thoughts and experiences. So, like right now, what's happening is that you're looking into a screen of some kind and you're seeing a picture, and you're hearing my voice, that you might also be aware of the room. So that's what's happening right now. And you'll be having your responses to what's being spoken about, what's happening. So in terms of our response, we can respond in different ways in terms of what we do. As some of you have already mentioned this, it was interesting in the discussion group that we had. Quite a few people were using this kind of language of we can be reactive or creative. So a reactive response is where we're pushing. We're either trying to kind of grab hold of or push away something that's going on in our immediate experience. A creative response is where we're actually just seeing what's really there and responding to it without trying to kind of manipulate it or force it into a different shape. So what we're trying to do with meditation generally, and with Metta Bhavana in particular, is to move from a kind of reactive response to a creative response. And that's really dependent on the, like I said, the way we kind of relate to what's there. So when we are in a reactive state, particularly towards another person, because when we encounter another person, we encounter a whole complex of sense experience. We see them, we hear them. They've got a kind of physical presence, and all kinds of feelings arise in the body, don't they, when we encounter another person of pleasure or displeasure or attraction or repulsion or fear and so on. And very often when we're reactive, our awareness of what's there is partial, or it might even be imagined or projected. We're seeing something that's there that might not actually be there. We might experience fear, for example, when there's actually nothing objectively to be afraid of, just because of the way we're perceiving what we're looking at. the classic one, or the classic example of that in the Buddhist tradition, is that you see a leaf in the dusk and you think it's a rat, and there's a reaction of disgust, and then you realise when you get a bit closer that it's just a leaf. But anyway, so often when our awareness of what we're perceiving as partial, we're more likely to be reactive. So when we're in a creative mental state, in a metaphysical state includes it's an example of a creative state. We're actually aware of what's actually there. We're actually seeing what's actually there. Creative mental states deepen out of an awareness of who and what is actually there. So it's a little bit like, in music, you've got to, obviously you've got to know your instrument, but to play music well with others, you've got to listen. You've really got to listen to what they're doing if you want to play well with them. It's not just about knowing what you're doing. So again, it's that awareness of others that enables that creativity. To use a different analogy in terms of drawing, to draw well, you need to spend a lot of time looking. I remember being told this by my art teacher at secondary school. He was saying, you need to spend 90% of the time looking at what you're drawing and only 10% of the time with your pencil on the page. So again, there's a really strong emphasis on being aware of what's there. Now, when we're doing the Metta Bhavana, it's not just a matter of being aware of what is there, it's a matter of being aware of who is there. And trying to become aware of the fact that people exist from their own side. So when we become aware of another person, we see them in our visual field, we hear them, we're aware of their presence, but we're trying to deepen that awareness to understand that they actually themselves have experience. So we're experiencing them experiencing, if you see what I mean. They're not just it's not just like observing a wall or observing a chair. They're actually an experiencing organism, creature. So we're trying to deepen our awareness from an awareness of the other person existing from our perspective to an awareness of the other person existing from their perspective, from their side, so to speak. So that's what metta is really about. It's about making that transition. I hope this doesn't sound too abstract, but it's actually about feeling that other person is feeling themselves. So I just wanted to give a little story from the Buddhist tradition, which illustrates this. And it's a little story about two disciples of the Buddha who happened to be the king and queen, King Pasenadi of Kosala and his queen Malika. And the story goes, a very, very simple little story. This comes from a very ancient Buddhist text called the Udana. And basically they're in the palace, and King Pasenadi says to the queen, Queen Malika, he says, is there anyone more dear to you than yourself? And then Queen Malika says, no, your majesty, there is no one more dear to me than myself. And what about you, your majesty? Is there anyone more dear to you than yourself? And then he says, no, Malika, there is no one more dear to me than myself. So basically, the two of them have just had this kind of little insight that actually they're the most dear person to themselves. And it's the same for both of them. The king might have expected maybe that the queen would say, oh, well, you are the most dear person to me, but she doesn't. She says that she is the most dear person to herself. So what they then do is they go and see the Buddha. So the Buddha was living in the area, and they leave the palace and they go and see the Buddha who's living in the jungle. And they basically repeat what the conversation that they just had. So I'll just read you from the text. It says, then the king, descending from the palace, went to the Buddha, and on arrival, having bowed down to him, sat to one side. As he was sitting there, he said to the Buddha, just now I was together with Queen Malika in the upper palace. I said to her, is there anyone more dear to you than yourself? No, your majesty, she answered. There is no one more dear to me than myself. And what about you, your majesty? Is there anyone more dear to you than yourself? No, Malika, there is no one more dear to me than myself. Then, on realizing the significance of that, The Blessed One on that occasion exclaimed. So the Buddha, the Blessed One is the Buddha. So the Buddha kind of just sort of spontaneously utters a poem. It doesn't sound terribly poetic in English, but in the original language, it's actually a poem. And this is what he says. Searching in all directions with one's awareness, one finds no one dearer than oneself. In the same way, others are fiercely dear to themselves. So one should not hurt others if one loves oneself. So really what he's talking about is this imaginative identification that emerges when we become really aware of how important we are to ourselves. So it's not like a negation of ourselves, it's more of an extension of ourselves. We realize that other people really feel pain, other people really feel pleasure, other people really feel hope, other people really feel fear. That's really real to them. It's as real to them as it is to me. So that in a way, it's quite a simple idea, but quite far-reaching in its effect if we can really engage with it. And the Metta Bhavana gives us a kind of a vehicle through which we can engage with that reality. So I think I could talk a little bit more, but I think I'll just leave it there, because that's really the heart of what we're trying to do. The heart of what metta is this understanding, realizing and knowing that other people are real. You could put it as simply as that. And really feeling for them as strongly as we feel for ourselves. Even, as the Buddha says in another teaching, as strongly as a mother, perhaps risking her life, cherishes her child, her only child, develop an unlimited heart for all beings. So it's a really strong thing that we're trying to cultivate. But what can happen is that we can be really convinced of the value of doing that, and we can be really keen to do it. But when we enter into the practice, we try and force it. So rather than letting that metta just emerge from an awareness of the other person, we try and kind of force it. And then what happens is that it can get a bit dry and even a bit unpleasant and a bit painful. So what we're going to try and do this week and tonight in particular is trying to do the Metta Bhavana without the Bhavana so much. Yeah. So just in a way, Metta Bhavana without the Bhavana. So I'm sort of playing with words a little bit here, because obviously as soon as you think of a person, in a way that's an act of kindness, that if you hadn't have thought of them before, if you think of them with an intention of wishing them well. But we're just going to this week bring to mind a person and stay with what's there, stay with who they are, and not sort of immediately go into may you be well. Not that there's anything wrong with those phrases. They're very, very good, and we'll explore them in subsequent weeks. But we're just going to sit there, first of all, just connecting with ourselves, and then we're going to sit there connecting with the reality of the life of our friend, and then we're going to sit there connecting with the reality of the life of the neutral person. We're going to sit there connecting with the reality of the life of the difficult person, and then have those four people there together, and just have a sense of being part of the human community. Yeah. So we're actually going to meditate now for about 25-30 minutes. So if you'd like to set yourself up for meditation, that would be great, and we'll start in just a minute. Beginning by tuning into yourself. So just having a sense of what's happening. Beginning by having a sense of where you are. your surroundings, the room you're seated in. And tuning into your body, particularly tuning into your body as a whole collection of sensations, of feelings. You're not trying to change anything. You're simply opening up to what's actually there, the reality of your experience. So you could start by being aware of the contact you're making with what you're sitting on. A sense of the solidity of your body against the solidity of the chair. And aware of the core of your being as well, the heart area. And being open, being sensitive to that. So not just your physical experience, but your emotional and mental experience, your mood. And noticing that sense of dissatisfaction. So it's likely that we're not completely satisfied with our present state of mind. There's something incomplete, there's some tension, there's some hankering for well-being, for peace maybe, for contentment, for happiness. So that's just a reality of our present experience. So just noticing that, noticing our desire for well-being. Which may arise in response to something unpleasant or difficult about what's going on right now. And then bring to mind a good friend. And just notice how you're doing that. So what does it mean for you to bring another person to mind? Do you see them in your mind's eye? Do you have a sense of their body? Maybe the way they move their body or the sound of their voice. So it's as if through the mind we can evoke that person's particular character, their particular being, what makes that person and not somebody else. So there's no right or wrong way of doing this. So that person has experience the way you have experience. For example, they have a body too, and through their body they experience pleasure and pain. They also have an emotional life that's as vivid to them as your emotional life is to you. They really exist from their side. And if you're having trouble connecting, maybe you could just ask yourself, for example, how big are they? How much space does their body fill? How do they move? And as we become more aware of them, we can become more aware of what effect being with them, evoking their presence, has on us. And then just allowing that person to move into the background now. And just refreshing our awareness of ourself, of our body, of our mind, of our heart. And then bring to mind a neutral person. So this is someone whose life overlaps with our life, but for whom we don't have a strong feeling of attraction or aversion. They're just there, as it were. And we can bring them to mind as well as vividly as we can, trying to see them in our mind's eye. Or maybe we don't see them, but we just have a sense of their presence. A sense of them as being as alive as we are. And we reflect that they exist from their side, that their life is as vivid and real, as important to them as our life is to us. That they are a center of experience and a center of activity. Also a center of sensation, of pain and pleasure. They are as fiercely dear to themselves as we are to ourselves. So we're simply trying to see the reality of their life. And then just letting that person move into the background. And again, just get a sense of yourself. If you've lost a sense of yourself, your own body, your own heart and mind. And then bring to mind someone that you find difficult. So this is somebody whose life overlaps with yours, but there's actually a definite sense of discomfort or pain or irritation, maybe anger or aversion. So just bring them to mind. And as you bring them to mind, notice how you respond to their presence, to them being there. And if you notice that you're starting to generate thoughts about that person, maybe memories of painful incidents, try and come back to remembering that they exist from their side, that they experience pleasure and pain, that they have a whole life that's nothing to do with our reaction to them, our response to them. They exist from their own side. Their life is as fiercely dear to them as our life is to us. We don't need to get into a reflection on what they do and how it's good or bad. We just stay with the fact that they're a human being who experiences pleasure and pain and whose life isn't important to them as our life is to us. So again, just notice what's happening now. Are we lost in thoughts and fantasies and conversations, maybe arguments? And if we are just trying to come back to them as being not about us, so that person is not just the painful thing that we experience in relation to them, there's a whole life there. And then moving now into the fifth and final part of the practice. So we're going to call each of the four people who have been in our meditation to mind together. So there's ourself, so in a way we don't need to imagine or imaginatively identify with ourselves, we can feel ourselves directly. Then there's our friend, and the neutral person, the person we find difficult, so each person feels their life as important. We try and know that and see that for each person, for ourselves. We're important to ourselves. We are dear to ourselves. Our friend is important to themselves. They are dear to themselves. The same for the neutral person and the difficult person. And just bring other people to mind. So you might like to think of your family, friends. So without, in a way, struggling or pushing or frowning, just letting that sense of the awareness of the lives of others expand in whatever way feels natural to you. Searching all directions with one's awareness, one finds no one dearer than oneself. In the same way, others are fiercely dear to themselves, so one should not hurt others if one loves oneself. And then just sit for a bit, just let go of trying to do anything in particular, and just sit, just exist. So if you just want to bring the meditation to a close, And I just want to let you know about, what to practice this week. So I'm aware of the fact that some of you might be, and some of you have said it already, that you're here at this course to re-engage with a practice that's slipped a bit, or maybe completely slipped. So the first thing just to think about is, well, how are you going to re-establish this your practice this week? Now, the most challenging thing to re-establishing a practice or establishing a practice, if you haven't already got one, is finding a time and sticking with it. So it's really, really important to find a time that works for you and to stick with that time. So maybe actually I'll just leave a little moment. I'll say one more thing and then I'll leave a little moment for you to reflect on that. If you've already got a meditation practice, you've already established a meditation practice, how might you deepen that practice? It might mean by meditating a little bit longer. You might even want to meditate more than once a day. So I'm suggesting that what you do in this course, as I mentioned earlier, is mostly do Metta Bhavana. So it might be that you want to, you could start doing the mindfulness of breathing in the evening and the Metta Bhavana in the morning, for example. Or you could do a little bit of meditation on the weekends that you wouldn't normally do. You could drop into the DBC has online meditations every weekday morning and at lunchtime that you might like to plug into those. And you might like to think about the fact that if you're going to do something new, you're going to need to drop something out of your day. So try and you're not just going to be able to squeeze something new in. Something's going to have to give probably. So what's that going to be? You might know of other conditions yourself from previous courses or reading or experience that you've had that you know will help you to deepen your practice in the coming weeks. So it's just an opportunity in the next minute or two just to make a definite resolve, a definite decision about your practice going forward this week. So try and make it a definite decision. So, for example, if you're starting a practice or restarting a practice, exactly what time are you going to do the practice? Exactly what time are you going to meditate? And how long are you going to do it for? So that meditation we just did was 25 minutes, which might be a good time to aim for if you're restarting. If you've already got an established practice, you might like to meditate for longer than that. Probably a lot of you will. I know a lot of you will be meditating for longer than 25 minutes. So what I'm suggesting for your meditation, for your Metta Bhavana this week, is that you follow a kind of way of doing the practice like I just led through there. So you're just focusing on really evoking a really strong sense of that person as being alive, without then moving into a kind of a more active kind of approach. The active approach will emerge the more active dimension rather will emerge in the coming weeks as we explore the practice in the coming weeks. So really what we're doing now is we're just focusing on that initial evocation of the person and what that means, and the fact that it means that there's another person there who's real And what does that do to us when we start reflecting on that reality? That's what we're focusing on this week. And like I was saying, we'll produce a video of the class, and as part of the video, you'll be able to follow that meditation at home if you want to, either on your phone or a device of some kind. And so that's the basic. So 2 things this week to practice. One is to re-establish your practice or deepen your practice. I've got this on a screen share, so I'll just share that. So first of all, to re-establish or deepen your practice, and secondly, to do Metta Bhavana without the Bhavana, as it were. Yep. So those are the 2 things. So next week, as Daniel was saying, we'll be on the same password, the same link and the same password. We'll also remind you of that the day before, or the day of the course. And tomorrow we'll send an email out, myself and Daniel, with the notes, the link to the video, the book recommendations. There's something else. Oh yeah, the introductory material for meditation. If you want to look at that, if you've not meditated before and you want to get a bit of background about the Metta Bhavana. And just to remind you that, as I said before the break, before the groups, that we are doing all of our courses at the moment for free. Sometimes people find it a little bit hard to know how much to give. So what I usually do is just say how much we used to charge for a 5-week course. So we're a charity and we get all of our funding. We produce all of it ourselves. We don't get any funding from anywhere else. So all of our funding comes from the courses that we run and the donations that we get. And we used to charge $195 if you were waged, $135 for a low waged, and no, it was $170 if you were waged, $135 if you're low waged, $95 if you're unwaged, and $55 if you're 25 or under. So that's what we used to charge. But you really can give as much or as little as you feel that you can. But we are, like I say, completely reliant on donations. If you've got more questions that didn't get answered, or I'll be hanging around for about 15 minutes on the call. So do feel free to just stay around and we can have a chat about your questions. And other than that, just wish you good luck for your practice, and I'll look forward to seeing you next week. Yeah. So that's it. So good night. Good luck with your practice.